Featuring exclusive interviews recorded live from our studio in Boston, Solutions Review presents Expert Insights, conversations with technology builders, analysts, and implementers.
I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and welcome to Expert Insights, featuring my guest, Raj Bains, co-founder and CEO of Prophecy.io. Raj is a builder of big projects. Before starting Prophecy, he's worked as a developer and project leader at Microsoft on Visual Studio and NVIDIA working to build the CUDA computing platform. He also managed Apache Hive for the Hadoop company Hortonworks, and he's now building his own big project, Prophecy, designed to deliver data engineering for the modern cloud era. Raj, thanks for being my guest today.
Thanks, Doug. I'm delighted to be here.
Let me ask you something right out of the gate, because you've built some big things. What's the biggest or the hardest part of building a big thing? You've been in large teams, you've started a company. What gets in the way?
When you're building big things, it's very challenging because you're bringing together a lot of people. A lot of people have different opinions. They have different things that they're interested in. So orchestrating the whole thing. And what's really, really hard is as you bring these big things to build what I would call a put together products. Because it's one thing to build something that is engineering. And there are engineering companies, and Google being one of them, right? You say, hey, I have a container problem. They will say, here, we built Kubernetes. But now it's quite challenging to use, right? Another way is you look at Apple, you say, hey, I have this laptop, it gets hot, right? And they'll say, okay, I'll come back with a solution after two years, they will come back and say, hey, Doug, here is a laptop. And you'll be like, it looks exactly like the one I had 2 years back. Right, and then they'll say, "Oh, but it doesn't get as hot, right? Battery lasts longer." Now they might have to have a new processor of the same competence as Intel, built on ARM, low power processor, and built a lot of binary translation, all this thing. But the thing is, like, it's all into a holistic vision of a product that is easy to use, has empathy with the user, all the look and feel. So getting a big project and getting it in the hands of users where it's easy to use, easy to manage is really hard. And we've seen failure modes like Hadoop, right? Super hard to use, because how do you get all these engineers building all these features without a strong founder, without a strong vision of saying, no, we're going to do it this way? It's just very hard.
So do you think it's getting harder with remote work, all of the issues around the pandemic? I mean, you've been building things for a while now. Would you say the conditions are harder or easier with the new collaboration tools and so forth?
I think in some ways, right, some things are harder, some things are easier, as you'd expect. Like having everybody in the same room and getting a small set of people all marching to the same agenda is significantly simpler than having a geographically distributed team, which is what we have. And it's quite a lot of work getting everybody aligned behind the same vision, having, again, that consistent, easy to use product. On the other hand, the collaboration tools do make it easy. For example, we use Figma. Now, Figma has, if let's say I'm wearing the product manager hat, I'm looking at the design, the designer is looking at the design, the UI developer is looking at the design, all of them in the same collaborative tool in Figma, commenting, going back and forth, and we can all align and deliver that stuff very quickly. So in a sense, on one side, what the remote work has taken away, the collaborative tools are coming back and giving those capabilities to us.
So when you decide you have built enough things for other people and you're going to build something for yourself, Prophecy, what was the first couple of steps that you needed to take in order to get this thing going? I mean, how did you come up with the idea, and who did you start to reach out to get it off the ground?
Yes, that's actually quite challenging, right? So the first thing is to figure out how to be in the right space, right? For me, I wanted to build a company, but I was working at NVIDIA on CUDA. Of course, CUDA has changed a lot, right? It's the basis for all the deep learning, machine learning that's happening, but there is no compiler company that you can really build. because compilers don't lend themselves. So the first two startups as much. So then I had to go into a space where I can see the new problems, see where the challenges are. And that was one of the reasons to move to databases, then to move to Hadoop, to see what are all the challenges with data, with analytics that are happening. The second thing is there has to be a core realization of like, here is a problem that I can solve and I can solve better than anybody else. And that was basically coming from building these power tools like compilers, which would compile Windows or run, your machine learning on graphics processors. Like that is really powerful software, really powerful tools. Now, when you go back to the data tools that the data people have, you're like, these are not very sophisticated. And now I have a strength that is unique to me. I need know how to build power tools. I can see a space where there is a huge need. And then you need something else. It's like, okay, I also have a good design sense. And so now it's like, okay, once you put that powerful engineering and design together, you are like, okay, that together, put together can attack this problem. But then that's okay. I found an opportunity. How do I go about it, right? And I remember saying, I haven't programmed in a few years and I need to build the first prototype. I flew back to actually India. I came here in 2002, so I've been here for 20 years. Spent some time with, at my parents' house and going in the backyard, taking a walk in the park with my dad and saying, how does one go from being one person to having a, billion-dollar revenue company? And along the way, you have to build technology. You have to convince people. You have to get, the social proof, the credibility. So it's a circle, right? You start working on one thing, the second thing, the third thing, and then, these things start. It's a cycle to build. You have to get the product vision. You have to get customers sold on it. You have to get other developers sold on it. You have to get investors sold on it. And it's very hard because, it's like the world doesn't want a startup to exist. So it can be quite challenging, and you have to kind of do it very step by step, getting each one of those small little bolts right.
Yeah. So what have you learned from building things in the past that allows you to build this? I mean, what are you trying to avoid that you may have? Because Lord knows I've made a lot of mistakes in some of the things I've built prior to Solutions Review. I'm curious what you're looking to avoid.
So I think there are things that I'm looking to avoid. One is having fiefdoms. We don't have titles. One of the things you can do in a startup, right? Having everybody aligned, like growth cures all problems. If there's a customer shouting at you and asking for something, so if you found the right product market fit, it's just beautiful because the customer is now pulling out features from your product, and everybody's just completely busy, consumed by delivering the product the customers are asking for. So a lot of, social tensions, everything, those go away, melt away. The other thing is in how you build engineering teams. One of the things is we're coming a little bit from the Netflix school, where we have, what I've seen is that if you put together a team of really capable engineers, small teams, they can move really fast. So what we have is a set of small teams, each with a technical lead. Sometimes they call them L7 level engineers who can get people aligned and work as technical lead, not as managers. So now we have like a team of 40 and one manager for the entire team. So it's all technical leads, shipping products, teams coming together and building that, which gives us speed. So in one sense, we are aligned. And then the other thing is that I've seen is that putting 3 people with 3 different skills together can sometimes not work. So for example, you say, I have a product manager who understands something about the product. I have a designer who understands the design. I have an engineer who understands the engineer. Let's have all of them talk to one another and come up with a great product. I don't see that as working. So what I have done with me and now with Maciek, right? Both of us write code and are very strong at engineering and engineering design. Both of us talk to a lot of customers, understand the exact problems, and then both of us have learned design, and we go back into Figma and work with our designer. So it's like you can put 3 things in one person's head and the solution you can come up with is much better. So in that sense, having very few people who go around coordinating and so removing that in the organization. So everything we do is designed for speed.
Yeah, I think there has been a cultural problem at some of these these actually highly successful tech companies where the individual contributor becomes so valuable that they want to, or at least they become so important, they want to become a manager because that's their career path. And ultimately they get pulled out of being an individual contributor and placed in a management role because to retain them. And they end up being highly ineffective at being a manager when they should remain that individual contributor, and trying to balance kind of the needs of the individual team member with the needs of the team, I think is one of the tricks, at least that I think I've seen.
Yes, and in that, I think at least the Bay Area technology companies have done a fairly reasonable job over time to build technical ladders going all the way up to CTO level. But the basic thing that we have to reinforce in the company is that we really value ICs, and I do that repeatedly. And it's not just ICs who are like really good technical leads as engineers. It's ICs in product management. It's somebody who is really good at understanding the market, really good at understanding the product, and saying, you have a really good career path, and you can get good compensation, good ownership in the company if you just do that really well. Or somebody even in sales who's like somewhat technical, they call it the kind of person who is not just not a regular salesperson, but somebody who can work with the market, understand the market, come back, give feedback, and kind of build some playbooks. Even getting those sales individuals and telling them, there is a career path for you as an IC without having to just manage and orchestrate a team, and getting them early into the team, getting them with having them get equity and ownership in the company. So that's something it's basically a culture where we celebrate good ICs. And so that's been very, very important.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent approach because, like I said, I think sometimes ICs believe their best path is to become management, and that is not necessarily their best value to the team or themselves, quite frankly. So let's get down into the Prophecy solution you're building, and I'm assuming you're just continuing to build it, right? You're wearing a lot of hats right now. You're CEO. I mean, you mentioned that you're doing some engineering. Talk a little bit about kind of where you are in that path. I mean, you've got a product that's shipped. You've got sales, but I have to believe you've got a pretty lengthy roadmap that you're working against.
Yes. So we are building a product that is quite large. And when I say large, and that's kind of also, that's why we needed this, powerhouse engineering team that very quickly delivers, because there have been what you would call ETL tools in the past. And, there's been Ab Initio, Informatica, a lot of these products, and people moved from scripts to tools in the last generation. And then as they moved to the cloud, they gave up all of those products. But there are a lot of features that those products gave, right? And it's not that all those things are not needed anymore, but they didn't want the products in the form that it was, that the old ETL products had. They had their own walled garden. Everything is, locked in, things like that. So where we are is that as enterprises move to the cloud, and we are very focused on enterprises or mid-sized businesses that have large data, it's like who have serious problems. So we are working with them, and the needs are quite a lot, right? So typically, if you look at what I would call the mid-market modern data stack, they are solving one problem at a time. That's not what our enterprise customer wants. Already they have been many data stores or data processing engines, and they have consolidated, right? They'll say, okay, I use a lot of Snowflake, I use a lot of Databricks, right? And we work very closely with Databricks, right? So, but they have consolidated on these data platforms, and they want one or two, right? A lot of our customers use both. So now the same thing is there at the layer above that, right? Our customers don't want a data quality solution, an observability, something to build, something to ingest data, something else to transform data. Like, it's almost like people took all the features of an ETL product on premises, and as you move to the cloud, they said each one of that is a separate company, right? So now your data integration problem becomes your data tool integration problem. And so I think where we are is we're building a complete solution, and that takes time. But what we are lucky in is that we have our enterprise customers, and we have a good number of, I would say, for even Fortune 100 customers who are patient with us, and we have like a roadmap of how we'll onboard each one of these things. But we are building the complete product. They're bought into the vision, and yeah. So and that we are on that journey, but we'll continue to need to build, for the data engineering team, for the data analyst team, for data quality, search, lineage. There's just a huge number of features, and yeah, and we just continue to build that as fast as we can.
So let's talk about how we've got here, and the opportunity that you have, because it's a vast one, and it's a fairly hairy one, because everybody's kind of coming at it from a different perspective, and I don't think a lot of customers, prospects, have seen where they were headed and now have arrived. And so let's talk about the data stack that you mentioned. Give me your take on the modern data stack as you see it with regard to some of these organizations out there that are being overwhelmed.
Yes. So basically, let me give you an example, and I'll come to this. And the example will make a lot of sense. So when I was at Hadoop, right, the Hortonworks, and I was looking at Hive, right, in the end, they built MapReduce. Now, MapReduce there was one realization: if you have data that's very large and the systems are unreliable, you want to maybe store the intermediate results so that you can recover when you crash. But apart from that, it was, they were going decades back in technology. People like Stonebreaker, who's, one of the very prominent people in databases, was like, this has taken us 2 decades back. I'm looking at it and saying, what are these guys doing? They have not read any research paper. They don't know the history of computer science, and so on. So now, and then what has happened is that the companies like Hadoop, which did that, right, they've kind of merged into nothing, right? They're kind of on their way out. So the basic realization there is that some technologies are transitionary, and what you might see on the cloud today might not be even as good as the enterprise products. If I look at modern data stack, and I'll take an example. I look at Ab Initio from 20-30 years ago. Ab Initio is superior in every sense. It's just not native to the cloud. But then all these modern data stack solutions, right? So if you look at those technologies, you say, have these people built something better? It's like, no. So the first thing about the modern data stack is it's not modern, right? It's people who have not seen systems from 20 to 30 years ago coming up with stuff. The second thing is people have gotten traction. Like dbt has gotten traction, so did MapReduce. What it does is it says there is a problem here. When people are developing with SQL, there is no good way to manage that. You're working with databases. There's no way to say what goes in production, what goes this. Everybody's stringing together random scripts, right? In the previous generation, some people would have just built their own in-house systems with scripts. Some people would have used Informatica, right? You would think Informatica is a visual ETL tool, which it is. But a lot of people would just use Informatica to call a script that would run on Teradata, SQL script. Then the second one, then the third one, then the fourth one, and chain these together and schedule them. They're actually only using Informatica to stitch them together, right? So as you move to the cloud, you look at something like dbt. It's a problem, right? Somebody needs to stitch together those things. But the question is that the right solution? And what they have done is they have given a solution that works. But it points to a larger problem. But the question is that what's going to work over time? And over time, as new technologies came, when Hive came, we started converting SQL in Hive to MapReduce. Then we said, you know what, MapReduce is not that good. Then we removed MapReduce, right? And we put a new engine in called Thais, and it became 100 times faster. So you look at that and say, it was a good transitionary technology that said this direction is where the need is and the potential is, but something better needs to get built. So I think that is one thing. I mean, it's good if you have Fivetran, right? They will get data ingested and landed. So that's a perfectly good solution, right? I think it's a pretty good solution. That solves that. But in terms of data transformation, in terms of data quality, in terms of metadata, a lot of these products are not modern. They are like, people go and people have, there is no modern solution on the cloud. So they have built something, but is that something really that good? And it's not, right? So that's, I think, where we are directionally headed. It's like a lot of these small point solutions are there. Over time, the question is, and all of their thesis is, hey, we'll run to mid markets, sell to a bunch of small startups who have nothing better, and it's an improvement. And then we will go to enterprise, and the question is, there is no enterprise there.
Let's talk about some of the macro things happening, particularly around AI, particularly around machine learning. I think people are now just waking up to what's the power that is being unleashed. And this is going to have an impact. I mean, it's certainly going to have an impact in the ability to code. It's going to have an impact in the ability to handle data, analyze data. I mean, what do you see with regard to some of the AI that's starting to be unleashed right now, and how that's going to impact not only the ability to deal with data, but data itself? I mean, just the data it creates.
Yes. So it's very interesting, Doug, and you pointed out to a very good thing, and I will stitch this into modern data stack and move it into the AI, right? So as we are looking at, like, as we are building our new solutions, right, we are saying here is, so we've at Prophecy said, here is low code, which is visual drag and drop. Now we merge it with code. So, you get all the usability of low code and all the power of code. And now the next chapter is, now let's get machine learning in and have machine learning do, say, 60 to 70% of your data transformation. So one thing is, what kind of data tools do you need to enable machine learning? The other part is, can you apply machine learning to make data transformation simple for business intelligence and machine learning, right? And in the light of this, where, let's say, you start building a pipeline, you put the first table on the canvas and say, I want to read this, and machine learning comes and says, I think you want to add this table next and do this join. I think that's what's most likely that you'll do. Do you want me to just add it? And you say, yeah, add it, right? And then at that way, it kind of suggests the next step to a point where 70 to 80% of your data pipeline is built automatically, right? And in the light of this technology, you see the format wars. Okay, write SQL with Jinja templates, right? It's so last generation, right? That's why I meant by saying that modern data stack is not modern. So we are building a world-class AI team. We have some top-level machine learning people. The recession has allowed us to hire people from Google, top engineers from Meta, which were not available to us last time, and we are working on some very cool stuff. So in a sense, we're building data copilot. It's going to take a few months to materialize, but you can write an English sentence about what you want, and I can write a data pipeline for you, right? Why do you need to do all that work? So in that sense, right, machine learning has a great impact. It's just going to automate away 60 to 70% of this data work, and that's the direction we are going in, and investing heavily in building these large language model based products.
So last question for me. This has been really interesting, and we could go a lot longer, but I'm gonna hold off. But I do have a question that I'd like to end with, and that is, if you were invited into basically every major enterprise that you'd like to do business with, and you got to talk directly to the C-suite and offer them one piece of advice, what would you tell them?
So what I would tell them is, there is a lot of talk about becoming a technology company, but one of the most productive things is to be focused on their business and work with the top technology companies to get you there, because there is a lot of trying to build the tools on their own. We mostly compete with in-house code, for example, and I think it's much more fruitful to work with strong technology partners and demand that we, the startups, build tools and products that meet their business users where their skills are at, instead of saying that, okay, these people are not building usable products, and now we need to build strong engineering teams to do the work of what startups should be doing. So I would say that to deliberately think about that boundary and say what we need is very strong technology startups that enable our business users to do things where their skills are.
Outstanding. Well, Raj, best of luck with Prophecy. Best of luck for the rest of the year and throughout the roadmap you're building. This has been a great pleasure to talk to you. Thanks very much for the time today.
Thank you so much. Really enjoyed the conversation.
You bet.